Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to this episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy, and today I've got something really interesting for you. On this particular segment, we're going to be focusing on some very beautiful dishes and even for the shows to come. And we're going to be taking you on a beautiful trip around the world. On this particular day, we're going to start off on the southern part of the American continent, and we're going to be making some Mexican. But before we proceed, I'm going to proceed to introduce the ingredients we'll be working with today. So from the front, we've got some black beans, or as regular as on the local name they call it njahe. We also have some yellow pepper, some shredded cabbage, some already cooked brown rice. I've also got some cilantro at the back, some pickled vegetables, which I will show you how to serve with. We also have some sweet corn here, some tomatoes, a bit of lemon there, and some lime. We also have some cheddar cheese, about 2 pieces of chicken breast. And then on the side, I've also got some lemon, some garlic powder, some chilies, both red and green, some butter, some cumin powder, and some garam masala. Also some avocado, a bit of some garlic, and last but not least, a bit of some tortilla wraps, which we're going to be using to plate, and a bit of olive oil. So we're going to now take a short break and allow you to get settled in. If you're going to be taking any notes with this show, please grab your pens and papers at this point, because when we do come back, we're going to dive right into it. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just tuning in, we were just introducing the ingredients we'll be working with today, and we're going to start off by cooking our chicken. We're going to be making a twist on a very, very classic dish, which is a burrito bowl. And as opposed to the original dish, which would have some pulled pork or some pulled beef, we're going to be making it very, very simple and making it a bit of some browned chicken strips. So we're going to start off by heating a pan on the side. And to that, we'll add some oil. And to that, you're just going to grab 1 piece of your breast there and proceed to, first of all, cut it down into 1 standard thickness. And once that's done, proceed to cut your chicken into strips, cutting diagonally into 1/8 of an inch in thickness. And proceed to do the same for the rest of your pieces. And proceed to do the same to the very last piece. And basically, just move your chicken onto a plate and proceed to reserve the rest. And now next, we're just going to proceed to start browning our chicken. So we're just going to allow our pan to come to the heat just until we can be able to see a bit of some smoke. And now proceed to add your chicken into the pan, adding 1 piece at a time. And proceed to give your pan a bit of a shake and add the rest of your pieces, allowing them to brown for about 6 to 8 minutes at high heat. just proceed to cook until they're done. And now to season that, add a bit of salt. It's about half a pinch. And a bit of some crushed black peppercorns. And just proceed to cook until they're completely brown. And we can now allow that to set aside for a few minutes and continue cooking. And while that proceeds, continue to grab another fresh pan, and into that add just a dollop of a bit of olive oil. And also about 2 knobs of butter. And allow your pan to heat up. Continue as well to toss your chicken as it continues to cook, making sure not to overcook some of the pieces. And to your chicken now, proceed to add some of your garam masala. Add also a bit of your garlic powder. And last but not least, a bit of your cumin powder. And just proceed to toss everything together. Continuing to cook everything at high heat. Just allow that to continue cooking. And now to the pan with your butter. Allow your butter just to melt down and proceed to add your beans. And now proceed to just mix your butter and your beans together, tossing them continuously. And also very important to remember, we are using pre-cooked beans, but if you are going to be using beans that are pre-cooked or for convenience, you can actually decide to cook your beans from scratch, or you can actually cook them just before you start your lunch prep and basically just fry them off to finish. Just continue to toss everything together in the pan. And to that as well, just a light seasoning, just a pinch of salt, and about half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. And mix everything together once more. And now turn off the heat and allow your beans to just heat up in that pan. And as well, continue to toss your chicken. And once those are cooked, turn your pan off and allow your pan to cool slightly. And now next up, we're just going to start off by preparing some of the other ingredients which are basically going to aid in plating this dish. And we're going to start off by cutting up 1 big yellow pepper. So I begin to just take off the ring at the top and take off the base as well. And using your knife, cut a nice thin strip right through the middle and proceed to core your pepper, discarding the inside, and proceed to cut into 2-inch chunks and proceed to discard the rest. And now for your peppers, proceed to cut them first into julienne strips. Proceed to do so to the very end. And then next, proceed to cut them now into some brunoise chunks. So begin first by holding your peppers, all of them aligned lengthways, and safely hold them with your hands, hold them down to the board, and proceed to cut them into 1/8 of an inch in thickness. And proceed to do the same with the rest of the pepper. Now you can grab a plate and just begin to move your ingredients into the plate. And next up, we're going to also be seasoning our cabbage, which we already have shredded on the side. So for that, you'll require one bowl, but we're going to clean our chopping board real quick. Now, just to dress your cabbage really lightly, remember cabbage is a very, very bland kind of vegetable, doesn't really have a taste, but given a bit of refreshing, it can actually just go well as a salad. So begin by adding your shredded cabbage to a big bowl. And to that, you will add a small pinch of salt. And proceed as well to cut your lemon, but remember always to squeeze your lemon on the sides, or you can actually just roll the lemon on your chopping board just before you proceed to cut it and squeeze. This actually helps you to really squeeze out the juices a little faster. Just using a knife, cut that into the middle. And while holding a sieve right over your cabbage, proceed to squeeze your lemon right over the top of the cabbage. Of course, making sure to discard the lemon peel and the seeds. And proceed to discard that as well. Now next up, remember a Mexican bowl is very much about assembly, so it definitely requires you to really put in quite a bit of effort with your plating, and especially most of all with the variety of fillings and toppings that you use. So these are just two of the ones that we're going to be working with. Next up, we're also going to be adding some cheese to that. So I'll proceed to just grab a small knife and begin first to take the wax off your cheese. And always remember to take the wax off, because remember this is actually not edible and it's actually very harmful to you. So remember, this is particularly used just to shield the cheese from any bacteria or any contamination. So always be sure to not allow your kids, or please also don't be tempted to chew on those. And now all you're going to do is grab your grater fitment and proceed to grate some of your cheese on a plate. So we're going to grate up about 3 tablespoons of cheese. We're going to reserve the rest of that. Be always sure also to detach some of those small pieces of cheese at the back of your grater fitment. And now set that aside. Next, we're also going to be using a bit of some chilies. So we're going to grab one of each. So begin by cutting your chilies lengthways. And now, using the front tip of your knife, proceed to spread the piece of chili open and begin to core out that middle piece, that inner core with the seeds, and discard that. And proceed to do so with all the pieces of your chili pepper. And remember, particularly, it's very important if you're serving this to kids, it's very, very crucial that you take the seeds out. That way the dish won't be too hot, and it'll actually just give it flavor instead of the heat from the seeds. Right, so proceed to discard your seeds. And now next up, using your sharp knife, proceed to cut those into very thin julienne strips. Proceed to do so to the very last piece. And now, as you can see, nice beautiful strips of julienne. So that we can actually now reserve on the side, and we can use that to garnish our dish a little later. So I'm just going to reserve those on the countertop. Next up, we're also going to be cutting in a bit of our limes. So Be sure to also squeeze those firmly. And just proceed to cut those right through the centers. And before placing them on the plate, proceed to remove the seeds. And you can actually also just skip the limes and use just the juice, but it is also very, very presentable to use them as a whole. So just set your limes on the plate. And next up, we're going to also be making some pico de gallo, which is a very, very simple Mexican salsa. And now, simple to that, we're just going to start by peeling our tomato, which I'm just going to just take off the sides of the skins. And proceed to do the same for the other piece. And what you need to do next now is just proceed to cut those into some very, very small cubes. So just start by cutting into strips, turn them 90 degrees, and proceed to cut into some very small cubes. And basically proceed to do the same until you have about 3 or 4 tablespoons. Alright, so we're just going to add just one more last piece. Right, so about a tomato, one full medium tomato should do. So proceed to move your mixture onto your plate. And you can reserve the rest of your tomato chunks for later. Then just proceed to clear your bowl. Just clean your counter. And now, we've basically now gotten to the last and final stage of just plating the dish, which is the last and final step. But before we do so, we are going to take a short commercial break now and just assemble our station together. And when we come back from the break, I'm just going to show you how to proceed to assemble everything together and give you just a bit of know-how on some of the small tips that you should know for this particular dish. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are with us before the break, you know what we were doing, but if you're just catching up with us, we've basically been working on some toppings that we're basically going to now proceed to plating. And just before we proceed, I'm also going to inform most of you that for most of the presentations we use on the show, they're just for demonstration, but I will also try and diversify it at this time and just give you a bit of a hint of some different techniques you could use. So now, just to start us off, I'm going to be using this beautiful ring to plate. And I'll be doing all my plating on this beautiful big plate. So just to start off, I'm going to start by plating my rice. So basically with the burrito bowl, you'd normally have your rice as the base, but I'm actually going to show you one with the rice on one side and one on the other side, which I'm going to show you with some tortilla wraps. So I'm just going to start off by spooning some of that rice into our mold. So we're using brown rice for this recipe, but you are more than welcome to substitute for white rice or any particular rice dish that you may be craving at that point. Right, so simple as that. Right, so I'll be plating one side like that just with rice, and the next one I'm just going to use this tortilla wraps that we made a little earlier. So with those I'm just going to fold them and place them right at the corner of the plate. And as you can see, this is just some wax paper that we're using just to keep them nice and soft. It also keeps them a little fresh, especially if you're going to be keeping them in your fridge. Very, very good addition to your kitchen artillery. And now next up, we're just going to proceed to start plating everything else. So remember, a particular burrito bowl, very much selection to choose from. I'm going to actually be working with some of my own improvised one, which is some of the pickled veggies we have. But before we proceed to that, we're just going to start off by plating most of the rest that we have. So to that, I would start with just a bit of our pickled cabbage on the side. And then to that, you could sprinkle just a bit of your yellow pepper. Follow that up with some of your red pepper. And place your 2 limes on the plate. And then a bit of cheese on the top. A bit of chilies as well, just for a bit of color and flavor. And then next up, also just a bit of some sweet corn. So just sprinkle those right over the sides just to give it an impression of a very, very simple salad. And now, last but not least, some of your black beans, just around the side of your rice like that. Next up, a bit of your chicken. And at this point, I will also remind you, you could actually substitute your chicken for some ground beef or some pulled pork. Also still a very, very good addition, especially if you've got some preferences to meat. Please don't be limited to just that. And then last but not least, we're just going to just spoon out our avocado from its skin there. And basically just add that to the side. And now you can proceed to add some of your pickled vegetables. So these are basically some of the vegetables I decided to pickle myself. So in that I've got a bit of some cucumbers, a bit of some mango. Quite a very good option to have, especially if you're trying to really give your lunch a bit of a lift. And just small piece of underseed there. So that's just one technique you could actually use to plate. And it would be as simple as that, and you just have your tortillas on the side. Or you could alternatively have something similar to that, which you'd basically just use to separate all your toppings. So I would just go with a bit of chili in the middle, a bit of cheese at the end, maybe just your 2 pieces of lime, just like that, as an added substitute. And you can now just basically mix your other condiments together in the bigger bowls. And just to also give it a nice refreshing little salad to go with as well, you could also just chop up some of your beautiful cilantro. And sprinkle that right over your plate. And that, ladies and gentlemen, would be a very, very simple technique of plating your burrito bowl. And just to give you some other additional tips that you may use, you can actually substitute the rice. If you prefer to use tortilla wraps to rice, you can actually do so. For the meat as well, you can actually work with some ground beef, you can work with beef strips, chicken strips, or even fish if you're feeling like really being spontaneous. And as well for the chilies, always remember, if you're going to be serving this to an adult portion or to an adult sitting, you can actually just throw in the seeds in there. But remember, for reasons that you may actually want to serve this to your kids as well, always a very good addition to just take out the seeds, and the chilies will actually just really be appetizing and not be a problem to have. So from my end, thank you so much for tuning in today. I do hope you've learned something that you can incorporate into your very own kitchen at home. But from the studios, thank you so much for tuning in today. I will also remind you to check out our Facebook page. We have plenty for you to see. We are also going to be live very soon, but you will see that in the future. But particularly for this episode, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're going to be making your lunch today, I do hope you enjoy it. So until the next episode, thank you so much for myself, and see you soon.